Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Albers, and welcome to This Week in Anderson. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Ellis. And Steve, it's kind of fitting that, we last week had Vince Soriano, a legend at Anderson High School, and we've got another one here again, and Andy Wolf. And I'm telling you, two really great podcasts back-to-back with Vince Soriano, now Andy Wolf.
Well, I tell you, Danny, we're so lucky that we get to do this because we get to talk to legends, and this is another living legend that we have here. Not only a legend as a teacher, but as a coach. And if you go, anybody who knows anything about Anderson High School, you go down to the track, and the track's named after the guy. Yeah. For goodness sakes. So that tells you what type of a legend we're dealing with here. So I'm honored to be a part of this one.
Yeah, it's going to be nice, and is joining us, as we said, is Andy Wolf. Andy, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. Glad to be here with you guys.
So let's talk a little bit about. I think I'm pretty right on this. That you grew up in Anderson. Went to talk a little bit about living in Anderson and growing up, going to high school at Anderson.
Well, obviously it's just, the greatest school around, but I was K through 12. Forest Road, when I was little, was dirt.
Really?
Yeah, dirt and gravel, and they oiled it twice a year. Once you got around the bend past the high school, the pavement stopped. I mean, wow. We were small. Beachmont was 2 lanes.
Man.
I sat in German class when the old school was where the medical building is now.
Yeah.
And watched traffic come to a dead stop in both lanes, one each way, at exactly the time that the principal was playing the radio over the intercom that President Kennedy got shot.
No way.
And you could see people get out of their cars. They had their car radios on, and they just kind of hugged each other and cried.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I was in ninth grade German class. So yeah, it was a different place, and a great place. Beachmont Mall was an orchard.
Really?
Yeah, that's if you look on maps, that part of the neighborhood's called Fruit Hill. That's why.
Yeah. Wow. That's
so a little different than it is
today. Just a little bit.
So when you graduated, it was still at the old Anderson Middle School building.
No, it opened up about the time I was a freshman, and the freshmen in those days were not part of the high school. We were still in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade school.
Okay.
And the gym opened when I was a sophomore. That part of it opened a year later.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you were in high school, what sports and what other activities were you involved with?
Cross country in the fall, and I only did that because the basketball coach said you had to either do football or cross country if you wanted to try out for basketball. And I was sure that I was going to be the world's greatest short basketball player.
Yeah.
And the first year, quite honestly, and I tell my runners this, I knew every hiding place in Anderson Township. But yeah, I did cross country, then basketball for a few years, and then track. So 3 sports.
So where was your routes going? When you guys ran for cross country, where would you guys go back then?
Well, training was so different then. We didn't do a lot of over distance runs. Paul Hamilton was the cross country coach. You may know Paul. He was also the basketball coach. Most of it was interval training on the track. That was the big theory then, was after training, interval training, Mahaley, Igloy, that kind of stuff. We never would have thought of sending us out on a 6-mile run or anything.
Yeah.
The longest we ever did was down an old 5-mile road to the river and back.
Wow.
Okay.
Which had no cars on it in those days.
Right. Wow.
Did a car with a search warrant on it.
So when did you start really getting serious about track and cross country? What grade?
My junior year, I was on the team, and for cross country, it was only 2 miles in those days. And I was not varsity, but mononucleosis went through the school.
Okay.
And all kind of people were out. And all of a sudden, we used to have our cross country was 3 weeks, 3 Wednesdays in a row. The league would meet at Avon Golf Course. and then they'd add up your cumulative score. So all of a sudden, because of mono, I had to be on the varsity.
Wow.
And one of the varsity guys was the point guard on the basketball team. He was a tough guy. His name was Terry Shannon. And Terry wouldn't even like to lose anything. I mean, he was so competitive. So we all get out of the bus at Avon Golf Course, and Coach Hamilton, of course, went off to get the packet and all the stuff coaches do. And Terry Shannon got me up against the bus, grabbed me with one hand like this, and used a couple words you may not, they weren't real bad, but
Yeah.
he just made it clear that I better run fast so I wouldn't let the team down. And then from about 8 inches, boom, he punched me in the chest real hard.
Wow.
Okay.
And I'm going, oh my God, this guy's going to kill me. So I decided right then I was going to run next to Terry Shannon until I died. Because if I didn't, he was going to kill me.
Yeah.
This was a no-win situation. So my best time going into that meet was like 12:26. Not that I remember every detail or anything.
Sure.
2 miles, not very good. And I stayed with Terry Shannon, and all of a sudden we could see the finish line. And he was the number 2 guy. Frank Osborne was number 1. And there's the finish line. I'm thinking, whoa, I did real good here.
Yeah.
But I was so scared, I actually asked Terry if I could pass him.
Oh,
And I
do you
thought,
mind?
I better ask him nice. And he said no. and I passed him anyway and beat him. And when we got back to the bus, he got me up against the bus and punched me again. But it was one of those, you're okay punches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it still hurt, but I knew I was kind of accepted then. And I knocked about 2 minutes off my time, and to the mid 10 minutes, and I realized that didn't hurt any more than running
Yeah.
12 and a half minutes.
Who was some of the competition schools that you were back then that were really good?
Actually, we were in 2 leagues then. One was called the Hamilton County League, and the other was called the Suburban League, I think.
Really?
So we'd run against Princeton, the old Green Hills High School,
Mhm.
Oak Hills, all those kind of places.
So when you left Anderson, did you go on to college then and run in college, or what was your path?
No, I never went to college. I just faked all those things, and I'm glad nobody's asked on it. Yeah, I went to Marietta College. I'd been offered some partial scholarships, but our quarterback, a guy named Bruce Shingledecker, was getting recruited at Marietta. And back then there were only 2 divisions in college division and university division. So, and they could give some aid. His mother didn't want him to ride up to Marietta alone. He was going to sign the whole paper. They didn't have all this dramatic stuff in the gym.
Right.
So I went along with him, and I was at that time pretty sure I was going to go to Miami to run. And the secretary, while we were waiting for Bruce to meet the football coach, asked me if I played any sports, and I told her track and cross country, and didn't think about it. And then all of a sudden a man came out and said hi. He says, I'm the track and cross country coach. Let's just chat while Bruce is in with the football coach. So he took me over to the record board and he said, what do you think? And I go, you guys aren't very good. I can beat the bottom half.
Wow.
And he was just such a great guy. And he said, if I can put together a package that'll equal Miami, so your family wouldn't pay any more, would you be interested? And I said, I would be interested, because I like the small college thing. And the Miami coach had told me, if you come here to run, you won't do anything else but go to class and run.
Yeah.
There will be no other activities. So that was probably my first adult decision, and it was a good one.
Yeah. Well,
Worked out.
that's a great decision. Marietta's a good school. And then after that, did you then immediately go to Anderson, or did you go teach somewhere else, or how did that all materialize?
No, actually, I didn't get a job right away. In those days, teachers were actually recruited. Superintendents used to go out to colleges and recruit and interview. And every year when the Forest Hills people came to Marietta, they'd call ahead, and assistant superintendent, whoever it was, I knew them all.
Yeah.
They'd take me out to lunch, and just great guys. And they said if we had an opening, we'd hire you, but we just don't have any openings. So I started out the school year just being a substitute, because history teachers were a dime a dozen. And I think a whole lot of people used it as a deferral not to go to Vietnam. So there were zillions of teachers. So I started out subbing, and then right at the end of football season, one of the football coaches quit to go into construction to make more money.
Really?
And yeah, the assistant superintendent, Mr. Justice was his name. What a great name.
Mm-hmm.
He called and said, "Can you start on Monday?" And I said, "Sure." So I don't think I even filled out a job application.
Really?
If I remember.
So
that's how it started, November 15th, 1971.
that is crazy. And
Was that your plan all along, Coach? I mean, when you were in college, that you were going to teach and coach?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to be a teacher since the 6th grade.
Okay.
I had a 6th grade teacher named Jerry Boyle, who was just such an influence that ever since I was in Mr. Boyle's class, I wanted to be a teacher because I wanted to be like him.
Yeah.
You know, and I know for a fact that I had you, you know, I was a student of yours. I don't know if Steve was, but we had
I was.
We were both probably one of your top students, I would imagine, right?
That's the way I remember it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Wanted to check on that one.
So how many years did you teach, Andy?
40.
40 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, you know, as legendary as that is, and everybody, and you think about the generations that you have taught, and, you know, people that you've taught early on, and then you taught their kids, I'm sure, and onward. Approximately how many times you think you told the hitchhiker story?
The first group I told it to was maybe 1974-ish.
Okay.
Bringing some guys home from the regional meet. It was dark. Mark Kelly I remember Mark was Mark Kelly Roofing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, those guys were in the car, and I told them the story because there was nothing else to do in the car.
Sure.
Riding home from, in those days, coming home from Dayton was a long trip, you know, no freeways. And then that was in track. And then the next year, one of those guys walked into my classroom because they had gone to Marietta as a freshman, walked into my classroom right before Thanksgiving break and says, "Coach, it's true." I said, "What, American history?" He goes, "No, that hitchhiker story you told us," because he had gone to see the guy at the pizza parlor.
Oh.
And he knocked on the door, and he said to the old guy, "Do you know Mr. Wolf?" And the guy says, I don't know Mr. Wolf. And he says, "My teacher told me a story about a hitchhiker, and I wasn't sure if it was true or not." And Pietro, the old guy, says, "Come on in, son. I know exactly what you want to hear." When he walked into class and said, "Hey, the hitchhiker story," I'd never told it in class. And from then on, so it's about since the fall of 1975.
Wow.
Pretty much every class got it every semester. And I still
and people were just super excited couldn't wait for that story because they knew once they saw your name on the schedule that story was coming, and you know they had heard from years gone by. Incredible.
Yeah.
So in the years, I mean, teaching for 40 years, you had to have taught with some great principals and teachers and other coaches. How did you see how Anderson changed over the course of your career?
Well, certainly it got bigger. I think when I was a student, Anderson, I think, fielded 7 sports.
Wow.
There were no girls sports then. Girls did GAA, girls
Okay.
athletics, like intramurals.
Yeah.
We had, I think, 7 teams through the year. Now it's got to be in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
And until the renovation, well, in the last half a decade,
Sure.
it's taken. the facilities were no different. So we went from 7 teams with whatever locker room space we had to 20 some teams,
Same, yeah.
3 different seasons, but 2 genders and the same space.
Yeah.
Athletics certainly is crowded. School, we've had such great principals. People in the neighborhood may just not know how lucky we are.
That's why we do this, Andy, just to promote it so much. As much as we love, Anderson and going through it. I mean, Danny, we finally found somebody that's got more love than us. I mean, living there, teaching there, coaching there for the length of time that Andy's been there. It's incredible. Yeah. So is there an era or a decade that you would say that you liked better, coaching and teaching?
I can tell you when Anderson was 7 through 12, we went grade 7 through 12. People were worried it would be an issue. I think those were the best years
really
for Anderson and probably Turpin. The old kids never hassled the young kids, but as far as teaching and coaching, everybody was here. If a real smart kid in junior high was one of those math wizards, if they needed to go take algebra 2 or whatever you did in math, it was there. And what was so cool, our competition teams, like in English and history and science, if they came in 3rd or 4th in the state, it was a bad year. And the English department just dominated. I mean, they worked to the state English tests, what LeBron James is to basketball. I mean, they were always huge. And those were great years academically and athletically and socially. Mike Hall was the principal, and he's just, one of the greatest all-time guys ever.
Sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Did you, when you first came to Anderson, were you the coach right away, or did it take a couple years before you be the coach?
I was not. The first spring that I was there, the spring of '72, there was a head track coach and an assistant, and I volunteered because there was no job available.
Right.
The second year, I got paid to be the assistant. The assistant coach, Joe Nickel, went to North College Hill, where he kind of became a legendary guy forever, and great guy. So I took Joe's spot, and then I was assistant for 2 years with Fred Enders, and then I took over in, I guess, the spring of '75, maybe. So I think I've been coaching, not counting the assistant year, since you didn't get paid, maybe 47, 48 years.
Incredible.
Someday I'll. Yeah, I was just so lucky. And then Fred left because his boys were getting big, and he said, never ignore your own children. When you're coaching, it's easy to do that, but don't do that.
Right.
And so he left to spend more time with his kids. And then when I got kids, I made sure I was still running competitively. I did all my running before school. I'd get up, crack of dawn. In fact, I ran to school.
Wow.
Kept closing that little coach's office.
Wow.
Ran home and had some real adventures then because there were no street lights. One time I got up in the middle of January, it was really cold. I thought I'd heard my alarm, and I ran down to school and it was all locked up. I thought, what's going on here? So near the corner of Wolf Angle and Frisch's was some business then. It's now where all the Roses is, but it was a little grocery store then, and the clock in the window said 10 after 3.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, I thought I'd heard my alarm. So I just found one of the windows that wasn't locked on the first floor, and I just crawled through the windows to stay warm and wait for school to start.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, I remember back when we were in school, Danny, when I know you guys would run all over the place, and you were running with the likes of Jeff Justice and Matt Byers and those guys, and those guys were really good and went far. And and it was like nothing for you because they would hang with you.
Yeah, those are fun years. Yeah, we did some of those guys would go down to what's now Withrow Nature Preserve or Woodland Mountain Park when there wasn't maybe a light snow,
Yeah.
and we try to find some deer and chase them, and chase until they got tired. You know, kind of like the cavemen used to do.
Yeah.
We did not beat them to death with a stick after. You know,
Oh, no.
but you can run a long way up on those hills adjacent to Route 52 heading towards New Richmond.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were fun.
Wow.
You know,
So that's what's.
I was
Go
going
ahead,
to, sorry, Steve. I was going to say, but one person that we are going to eventually get on is one of your assistant coach that you've had for years is Theresa Gross, and
Oh,
she's been phenomenal too. So talk a little bit about, you always have to have good coaches surrounding you, and she's been one of those ones that has been really good and great for the Anderson High School program.
yeah. Well, she's just super. We're really good friends. Her oldest daughter took her first steps in our backyard.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And she's now a mother. So Teresa's a grandma. But when she came here in the mid 80s, the principal said she was interested in coaching, and I didn't know anything about her, except she was tall. That's all I knew. I didn't know her. But like any teacher who said they wanted to coach with me, I would stand outside their classroom when I had a free period when they couldn't see me and listen to them teach. Because if you couldn't teach,
Right.
you're not going to convince a kid to run track.
Right.
And I learned about that because I had an old German teacher when I was at Anderson named Wayne Williams. And when I came back to teach and was a rookie, he said, you know the teachers here from when you're a student. He said, go stand outside where they can't see you and listen to the best ones and copy the good things they do. And he said, but it's even more important to listen to the worst ones and make sure you never do what they do. And I made a habit out of that. And I listened to Theresa teach for a couple of days, and I knew she would be a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. She's
Then
definitely.
I found out later she was a state champion and all that in high school. So
yeah.
Wow.
We're going to try to get with her too, to get her on, and would love to get her insights and everything that's going on. But you've also had some as Steve was saying, some phenomenal athletes that went through Anderson, and obviously with the track. I mean, is there any one or couple that might stick out to you that that just are special to you, or anybody that I know that's probably hard putting you on the spot a little bit, but
You've had some state champions.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we've had a few. Well, I guess starting with state champions, you'd have to start with Chelsea Homan, Jake Andriadis, Bill Riffle.
Yep.
And then we've had one national champion, Sean Prophet.
Oh yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
1988 national steeplechase champion, and in that race, he beat the European champion who came over from Ireland.
Wow.
It wasn't just the best kids in America. There were two Irish guys in there, and one guy was the European champion.
No kidding.
And that was kind of a cool race because Sean at the district meet had got mugged.
Really?
And yeah, there was a gang over Princeton, and they wanted to take him out so he wouldn't be on the 2-mile relay.
Oh my gosh.
Princeton had they had a gang called the Smashers, and they attacked him on the track, and he
wow,
had a couple teeth hurt and cracked his head, and
that's incredible.
Yeah, and it kept him from probably winning the state meet. But a month later, Mike Hall and I got a hold of the guys at this national meet and told them about Sean, that he had done well in the Junior Olympics the year before, and the mugging of Sean actually made the sports section of USA Today.
Really?
Really? Wow.
And but anyway, he bounced back from that, and in that national championship race, he and the Irish kid, on the second to the last lap, they're going over the water jump, and the Irish kid starts to stumble, and Sean catches him. And the announcer was going wild about what a great act of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
One kept the kid from going down in the water, and they battled it out for the next lap and a half, and Sean pulled ahead to win.
Wow.
That's a great story.
That is
Wow.
a great
Yeah.
story.
Wow. Hey, Andy, were you like the first one to get steeplechase in the
First high
in
school around here, yeah.
yeah. Because I remember when that went in, I'm like, what the heck is that? And then people started to understand that, and I had never seen it at other tracks. Not that I've been a whole lot, but I figured you were probably the pioneer for that for around here.
Yeah, and Sean won the national championship the year before the track was built. And then his dad bought the steeplechase barriers for us.
Okay.
And then, which zoom ahead to this past year, those original barriers don't adjust now that they have girls steeplechase. So Sean and his dad Rick spent a lot of money and donated a brand new set of steeplechase barriers, which we will bring out this year.
That's incredible.
So those are two great guys.
Wow.
And,
Wow. So in your post teaching, after you got out of teaching and retired, and I know you're still coaching, what fills your days now that you're retired?
well, a couple things I do for school. I've done some big volunteer projects. Mike Broadwater came to me a few years back and said, we need to honor our veterans. So we
Incredible.
said, if we can find 20 or so the first year, it'd be great. 20 is a pretty small number. So we got a great committee together, and you may have seen the display.
Oh yeah,
It's 22
it's
feet
special.
long and 8 feet high, and
Yep.
with the names that I have now that have come in the past 6 months, we'll go over the 500 name mark.
How about that?
And when we opened it, unveiled it on Veterans Day a couple years back, Dwayne Stewart, the head custodian who's been there about 30 years, said, we had no idea who would come. He said he thinks that's the single biggest one-day crowd event we've ever had.
Is that right?
It was so cool. And
Wow.
yeah,
that's really cool.
and there was a place when you sent your name in and what your service was and all that, if you wanted to make a donation. And it was incredible how many veterans not only sent in a check, but they wrote a little note that said, if you need more, just let me know.
Yeah.
No kidding.
That's what veterans do.
That's exactly right.
So the Veterans Day was a big project. And then the most recent one was with the renovation. They came to me and asked me to do that timeline in the main lobby. We spent about a year researching that. And then Matt Stanyard had a couple of his digital arts students transferred the pictures from the yearbooks and other pictures into whatever.
Is there a video of that anywhere, Andy? Because I know people that don't live in town or whatever, they would probably relish to see that.
I don't know of one, but that's a great idea. Maybe we could do that and put it on the website.
Yeah.
But I do know that people have come back to school and get the visitors pass, like tourists, to see their name on the Veterans Wall.
Yeah.
Especially, and the timeline's starting to get out there too. So
Yeah, and I'm sure that Steve and I are on that timeline. I'm sure, right?
could be.
No.
Could be.
Maybe as a fan. So Andy, you had talked earlier about when you're coaching your kids, making sure you spend time with your kids. Talk a little bit about your kids and how that was, them going through Anderson, and obviously the mainstay of your family and Barb, and how much of an effect she's had on you and your teaching and coaching career.
Well, of course, I couldn't do any of this if my wife Barb wasn't 100% with me on that.
That's right.
And she's probably, before computers, the best track meet scorer in America. Because as you know, we don't put on small track meets.
That's right.
That's right. But we had buckets of sand toys in the track shed for the long jump pit, so that my kids could play there, on Saturday practice, and they grew up in it. And I don't think I put any pressure on them to do track. I know when my oldest daughter went out for a little girls softball as a community league, she went the whole season and didn't swing the bat. So I'm thinking, okay, she's not an athlete. She's a great piano player. So she goes out for track in junior high. And she says, Dad, what event should I do? And I'm thinking, you didn't swing the bat in baseball. I said, so just thinking, why drag it out? Run something short. You know, run the 100 or the 200, because at least it'll be over quick. You know, and I'm legendary track coach, great eye for talent. Katie gets in the meet. She didn't lose a race for a year and a half.
Wow.
I absolutely never saw that coming.
Wow.
200, 400.
That's a great story.
Oh,
Yeah, never. And Kelly, then the next one, she did track and made it to the regional meet. Katie made it to the state meet. And her record in the 4x4 relay just got broken 2 years ago with the Sullivan girls on the end.
yeah.
We all of those girls meet. When Katie's group went in the Hall of Fame, we had the current relay team that broke their record come to the event and meet.
I remember that.
That's cool.
They all love that. Then, of course, when Kyle came along, he learned to pole vault from the guys on the team.
Yeah.
You know, Jake, Andriadis, and those guys. He was just a little skinny guy.
Right.
And in fact, I think that's a picture of him right over my shoulder here.
Yeah, I see it. Yep.
And he's real good.
Yeah.
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 Pretty special.
Yeah.
Where are they now, Andy? Are they in town?
Kind of. Yeah, Kyle set the high hurdle record in high school and was a pole vaulter. And unfortunately, his senior year, he was undefeated till the end when he broke his pole.
Oh, really?
And there was a trucking strike. We couldn't get another one.
Oh.
And he was just jumping so high, we didn't have any poles, and he just didn't advance through the tournament.
Oh my gosh.
Every week, and the kid from Moeller that he beat every week ended up winning the state meet. But he did go on at Wilmington College and was All-American 6 times.
Wow.
Indoor and outdoor. So
that's incredible.
And
that's awesome.
They're Division III, but if you put his results into the Division I meet, he would have only been All-American 3 times.
Oh, just 3.
Hey, no,
that's awesome.
He had a great career. He's one of the track coaches at Wilmington College.
Oh, great.
And left there. He was the head coach for a while, left head girls coach, but he did, you know, they split it up like we do, all the jumps. And he was the jumps coach. Then he went to UC to be an assistant coach for a while, but he liked the small college, so he went back to Wilmington.
That's great.
He's got 3 kids. My oldest daughter, Katie's in Lexington, and she's got 2 children. She runs a social work program out of the University of Kentucky. And Kelly, my middle daughter, lives here in Anderson Township. So,
wow, that's great.
Yeah,
So
very lucky.
We try to you know, always ask these questions, and I think everybody really gets a kick out of these things. And you know, the one question we kind of gave you a little heads up on it, but kind of talk a little bit about like your favorite memorable moment, maybe when you were in high school, maybe running, and then maybe as a coach, and then maybe as a teacher.
Well, the one running story there I told you about Terry Shannon punching me.
Yeah.
That's the luckiest thing that ever happened to me.
That changed everything. Yeah.
I mean, if he hadn't done that, I may be some rich lawyer, and what? You know, I don't want to do that. Probably one of the neatest days of my best day as a teacher. I never said a word. It was a class called Quest Class, and this was started by Mike Hall so that students then could have a place to talk and get things off their chest. And it was 16 kids. You sat in a circle, and they kept a journal, which they turned in once a week, and only I read it, and I would write back. And the only rules were that, you know, if somebody talked about hurting themselves or cutting themselves or certain things that the law required you tell the office about,
Right.
You know, kids all knew that. So this girl in class we started every day with, is there anything we need to talk about? And if they didn't want to bring it up personally, they all knew that they could leave a note in my teacher's mailbox, and then I would bring it up so that they wouldn't have to, you know,
Right.
be the one. So I had nice young lady in class who was always talking about her cousin with anorexia. She was so worried about her. And on this particular day, she started out talking about her cousin and how she was sick with worry. And so we're kind of commiserating with her and talking about it. Went on to another topic. And all of a sudden, this girl, in just a lull in the conversation, says, "Mr. Wolf, you know my cousin?" And I said, yeah, I know we've talked. She goes, "That's really me." I had no idea. She always, in those days, they kind of had the maxi skirts and the baggy sweaters. I didn't know.
Wow.
She said, "That's really me." So I'm thinking to myself, the next words I say have to have the wisdom of Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
And before I could, and the kids knew that, that was the topic where the office has to be notified.
Right.
If that comes up, I have to tell the principal and the counselor so she can get help. The kids all knew the rules. Before I could think of anything Solomonic to say, one of the kids gets up and goes over to her and hugs her.
Oh.
And then another one. And then another one.
Wow.
And the whole class walked her to her counselor.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And I never said a word. I did not direct their actions. They knew. And that's when I knew, man,
Wow.
maybe I'm doing something right the rest of the time.
Yep.
They walked her to the office. And that young lady still lives in Anderson Township. I see her very occasionally now. She's all grown up, of course.
Right.
Doing great.
Wow.
We say hi, but we never
Right.
dwell on that.
Right.
Right.
But that class saved lives.
Wow.
Wow.
I had another kid who was Hispanic who was writing in his journal that he wanted to beat up his mother and his sister.
Mm.
And that's another one that I should have gone right to the office with. But instead I wrote back in the journal, "Hey, that's not the way a real man handles things. Your job is to protect your family." And the next week he wrote something else similar. And I wrote the same thing. Well, he stayed after class. And he says, "Mr. Wolf, don't you like me?" I said, what do you mean? He goes, "I wrote about hurting my mom and my sister, and you didn't take me to the office." And I said, "Well, I was hoping to convince you that that's not what a real man does, and
Right.
don't want to get you in trouble." He says, "You don't understand. Where my family comes from, I'm expected in my family to push around my mom and my sister and my wife when I get married." And he said, "And I don't want to do that. I need you to take me to the office so I can promise Mr. Principal that I will never do this again."
Wow.
Wow.
Man.
I said,
alive.
"I am so sorry. You're exactly right. Let's go."
Wow. That is it. Those are two incredible stories.
Wow.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean,
You know why we don't have that class anymore? I was told it was because there was no way to quantify a grade, like a 93 or an 85.
Right. Yeah.
That class saved that. You talk about saving lives. That class did. And I get
That's-
Facebook messages now from kids from, years and years ago saying, "Mr. Wolf, you probably don't remember me, or you don't remember this day, but something happened in class that I've used that lesson with my child," or
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm sure you know this, Andy, but I mean the impact that especially you, that have on tens and tens and tens of people throughout the years. Just a single word can change somebody. And we see it now on social media. Like there'll be posts about remember what happened in high school, and they'll say something, "Yeah, Mr. Wolf said this or did this," and it's all positive, and people remember that, and it's from somebody that was in school 30 years ago maybe, or something like that, and it's incredible. And I know at some point you realized, probably before that Quest class, the impact that you had on people, and definitely after that too.
Yeah, I'm just very lucky to be in a position to do that kind of stuff. And even now in coaching, my assistant coaches are awesome, and they do really, I mean, I'm old. I got to make sure my coaches know what to do when, I could get run over by a bus tomorrow or something.
Right.
So a lot of what I do now is that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of the old guy who always has a story for a certain situation. And just like the hitchhiker story, there has to be that educational moment in it.
Right.
That's what school is.
Wow.
The track is just another classroom.
I tell you what, right now with just everything that's been going on in the world and the crazy stuff right now, I think that would be an awesome class right now for kids to take because, and I've always kind of hid this a little bit, but I've got horrible anxiety, and it's been tough.
Sure it is.
And, for people to talk about it, I think helps. And, it's just, I don't even know why I'm getting so emotional, but it just gets, it's hard. And sometimes people just need to talk about it. And so.
Well, you can see I get that way talking about, my kids or my team. And I don't feel bad about it either. Awards night every year, I know I'm going to get all choked up. A Quest class was special, and that's my call wanted us to have that class.
Yep.
But I think you got to have the right teacher. And and I think one of the things I didn't mind getting walked on once in a while because that's part of it. It's part of the longer strategy. Sometimes you don't want to have the last word, or you shouldn't have the last word. You got to save it for when the teachable moment occurs.
Right.
And I guess I figured that out a little bit.
No, you definitely did. I know a lot of, Jake Andriadis thinks highly of you. There's so many guys out there that I know that just love everything about you. You're honestly, you're synonymous with Anderson High School, as is Vince Soriano. There's certain guys that, I know Steve and I remember you from our high school days. I know you were voted teacher of the, I know they selected you a lot too for that. So, what you've done for the kids and the community in Anderson, I know Steve and I are very thankful for that.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm just unbelievably lucky, really. It's just what it is. Sometimes even a blind pig finds an acorn.
You always have some good ones.
My career goal was never to get promoted. I liked what I was doing. I don't want to be a principal. I had a chance to be an athletic director once, but my son was a little guy, and I said, Kyle, if I take this athletic director job, you can walk right across the hall and play basketball anytime you want.
Yeah.
He looked at me and said, you won't have time to play with me.
Oh, man.
So I called back and said,
no, thank you.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
I'll stick to my original plan of never being promoted.
Well, I tell you what, Steve, it's just been unbelievable to talk to, Andy and, like I said, back to back, having two just living legends at Anderson High School. It's been really cool. And, I'm just glad we found the time to get a hold of them.
Well, I hope that we can get this out as soon as possible, Danny, because as you said, in this day and age we're living in and everything, everybody's stuck inside and everything, that this is a great one for us to get out there. Absolutely. Because there's so many people that either had, Andy's as a teacher or as a, coach and know of him and have had kids that have had him. And, so it's just a great thing to have Andy. There's no one, you talk about Mount Rushmore, Danny, of Anderson. Absolutely. This guy's on it. And there's no one that loves Anderson probably any more than what he does. So, he's got my utmost respect.
Well, the good news is there's a lot of teachers that do all those things. They just don't have the visibility I get.
Yeah.
But if you're a parent in the neighborhood, you're living in the right neighborhood.
Yeah.
This is a great place.
Yeah, it definitely is. And Andy, we really, really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. I know Steve and I were really excited when we were able to get a hold of you. And I know everybody out in the community is really, really going to love this and look forward to watching this podcast. So we'll try to get this up. And I think, like Steve said, it'll be great just to get this up before, as everybody's, kind of in the COVID world and everything that's going on. It'll I think, give everybody that extra cheer to get them through the holidays, I think.
Kids are scared.
Yeah.
When you coach kids, you get to talk to them more than in a classroom. There's a lot of kids that are scared right now. They're afraid their grandparents are going to die before they see them again and stuff like that.
Right.
Anyway, I appreciate talking to you guys. You're always fun. You guys might have been known for being fun in your youth.
But in high school, that was a little too much, maybe.
Stories.
Maybe a little too much, but so we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. So for Steve Ellis, Andy Wolf, and Dan Albert, you've been watching This Week in Anderson. We'll catch you next week.